Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I am glad to be with you today in this Easter week for our Christian brothers and sisters. It is a beautiful high holy season. This is one of the two highest holy seasons in the Christian calendar. Our Muslim brothers and sisters are celebrating Ramadan. Our love and blessings to our Muslim brothers and sisters in faith. We love you all. God bless you today. We've got a lot of hot topics to cover today, but two we're going to put our focus on. We're going to look at TikTok in the second hour. What is driving the ban on TikTok? There's a lot of discussion about that now. Different lobbying groups, the oligarchs want control of the narrative. Corporate media is losing ground to independent media. 18 to 29-year-olds, more than a third of them go to TikTok as their primary news source. What does that mean? And the Anti-Defamation League said, hey, they changed the narrative on October 7th. We have not a generational problem. We have a generational problem, but we have a TikTok problem. More than that. It's not Democrat, it's not Republican, it's not right, left. It is TikTok. And we need to do something about it. And now, within a couple of months, TikTok might be talk to us today about what is happening to Darryl George and what's happening to a lot of our children. As I was speaking to you, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, I said this is happening at a very interesting time in our history when the Black suicide rate for our children, for Black children, has quadrupled within 10 years. There's got to be some kind of connection there as their sense of identity and self is being attacked at the highest levels through the courts and in our schools, where the courts are supposed to protect us and schools are supposed to mold us and help us to become that to which we aspire. But we've got, of course, Attorney Mark Fancher from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Cannot wait to hear what he has to say. So brilliant. We have Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, senior pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church, senior pastor there and part of the national leadership team at Rainbow Push. And of course, one of the founding members of Operation Push and senior advisor to Dr. Cornel West in his presidential quest, senior advisor to Reverend Al Sharpton. He's with the NAN as well and has been with Push since its founding, the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project, where he's educating young men and now young women so that they can become all that they are supposed to be. Dr. Candace Matthews, we can't say enough about this woman. She wears so many hats. Yes, the Rainbow Push hat, but where else are you, my cowgirl, coming from, Texas Hold'em?
I am also the state chair for the Texas Democratic Black Caucus, which is Texas Coalition Black Democrats. I'm also the national minister of politics for the New Black Panther Nation. Steering committee chair for the state of Texas for Rainbow Push. So it's a lot of hats.
It's a lot of hats, and she wears them all beautifully. She is our sister beloved in the struggle. We're going to start with our brother beloved in the struggle. Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. There's no one who has stood stronger for our community and for all people in Texas. Indeed, when I want to find out what's going on in Texas and the legislature, Rodney Ellis, the great former state senator, the Texas Harris County commissioner, says, aside from calling you, Candace, you better call Ron. Now, because Ron knows what's going on. I would not dare call you Ron in this context. Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, explain this Darryl George case, particularly since we've had the Crown Act, which of course we have in Illinois, and more, it is not legal to attack. Specifically, let's get very clear. This is not about curly, straight, wavy hair. This is about real kinky black hair. Because that's where you get attacked. You get attacked for the afro. you get attacked for that, not for something else. So, Colin Kaepernick, when he started wearing the afro, he became frightening. So talk to me. What happened? Let's just start at the beginning. What happened with Darryl George?
Yeah. So first of all, good morning. It's great to be on with you. I'm excited to be on with such a star-studded Black excellence panel. Yes. Black excellence continues throughout March when Black History Month. They only give us a February, but we're going to continue that. So listen, Darryl George is a great young man, a fine student at Barbers Hill High School. He's an honor student, the kind of young man that we can be proud of. No disciplinary problems. Just a good kid. You know, I'm a father. I have a son. I would want my son to be someone who is like this young man. He's very, humble, very meek, very mild, not into drugs and gangs, and not doing things that would, make you pull your hair out. This young man rocked his natural hair. He rocked locks that are very Afrocentric, that are very popular, that are very part of many cultures and traditions, and many people have them for religious reasons, a whole lot of things. So he was told that he would either have to cut his hair, or he wouldn't be able to stay in school. Now, let me fast forward really quick. You remember DeAndre Arnold, a few years back? He was a senior. He was a student at Barbers Hill High School. He was given the same choice. He left, and that there was no Crown Act passed at that time. We passed the Crown Act, House Bill 567, that was authored by Representative Retta Andrews Bowers. I was the first joint author, as well as other joint authors, but we passed that bill in a bipartisan way. Now, Santita, it is hard as hell to pass any progressive legislation in Texas. I'm gonna be very frank with you. We had a lot of people like Dr. Matthews and other people come and testify. Long story short, we passed House Bill 567. Thank God we passed it. That bill protects students and people in the workplace from having policies that would discriminate against people from braids, locks, and twists that are commonly associated with African Americans. It doesn't exclusively cover African Americans, but commonly associated with African Americans. So basically, the bottom line is, when we passed that bill, it went into effect September 1st of last year. It would have protected students like Darryl and schools like Barbers Hill from discriminating against those students. They created a policy that said you couldn't wear your hair past a length that went below your eyebrows or your earlobe. That would basically be in total contradiction of the Crown Act, because there's no way you can really have locks or twists or braids that are that short. Even though he had his hair pinned up, the policy says that you couldn't even have that. So this is a school that wants their students to conform to European standards of what is acceptable, which you said in your opening: straight, wavy, curly, all of that is fine, but don't bring no Afrocentric hairstyles to our school. This is nonsense, and it's totally in violation of the Crown Act. Unfortunately, they're in a jurisdiction that is very conservative, and they had a good old boy conservative, what I think is a MAGA judge, to basically co-sign to say that their hair policy that they have does not violate the Crown Act. And I think it was total nonsense. And the family is appealing. The Texas Legislative Black Caucus, which I'm the chair of, we're standing behind Darryl. We're standing behind the family. We're now happy that the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, was initially working with Dr. Candace Matthews and I, and said we need federal intervention. And we said, yes, we do, because the state of Texas, once again, is showing their ugly hands. We never had the governor step in, even though we passed this law. We never had the attorney general step in. We never had the secretary, TEA commissioner Mike Marafa step in. We passed this law, but they didn't have any teeth behind the enforcement provision and let Barbers Hill discriminate against this student. So we are working with the NAACP, with Dr. Matthews and others to fight against this discrimination that's happening to this young man. He's suffered mental trauma. He suffered all kind of stress and trauma because of what this school is doing to him, and is flat out wrong. And I appreciate this platform so that others in the public can join us and support this young man.
See, my concern is where he is emotionally, where he is mentally, where he is developmentally, where he is educationally. Is he being homeschooled? Where is he with that? Is he planning to go to pursue higher education, vocational education? What is he planning to do? And just, as we're watching, child suicides in the Black community go through the roof. Indeed, our children are the most at risk for suicides, Black child suicides of any group in the United States today. Our rates have quadrupled. And when our children are told that they're less than, they're not smart enough, that their hair is ugly, that they're ugly, I mean, in ways great and small. Where is he? How is he doing now?
He's suffered a lot, and Dr. Matthews has been closer to him than I have. But just when we were there at the court, when we got out of court after the judge made that decision, I mean, he was trembling, he was visibly shaken, he was crying, he was very emotional, because he was very optimistic and hopeful that the judicial system would be fair and equitable, because the school had done everything to make him feel less than human. They treated him like he was a criminal in isolation. They wouldn't let him be with his peers and participate in extracurricular activities because he's been suspended, not because he's fighting or doing drugs or skipping or doing anything, but wearing his natural hair that the Crown Act protects. So this is it is tragic. It is certainly something that has taken an emotional toll on him and his mother. It has definitely caused him a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And think about it, this is supposed to be the best years of his life, where he is thriving, where he has a great emotional stability, where he's able to learn in an environment that is conducive with his peers, not being in isolation like some prisoner, not having to conform to what these white folks think is acceptable, not being able to look in the mirror and say, what's wrong with me? Because they want me to change my hairstyle to conform to what they think I should look like. So this is terrible. My heart goes out. And that's why we continue to fight. That's why we continue to speak truth to power, to let him know that you will not stand alone, that we're with you, that we're going to be with you all the way. And unfortunately, as we talk today, they've doubled down and they are not backing down. They will continue to, keep him suspended where he can't learn in an environment that is the way that kids learn is through interaction. Like, think about one of the things we learned about COVID was isolation doesn't work. It led to, as you talked about, increased suicide and other things, So this young man, even though we're post-COVID, he's not able to go to school and learn with his peers. He's not able to have a normal high school experience. And and Dr. Candace Matthews has been with the family from day one. So she's been up close and personal, checking on his mental well-being. And we're trying to do everything we can to give them the resources so that he can cope and not just survive, but thrive.
Absolutely.
And let this be a setback for a setup for a comeback.
Well, and that's where I have to, give both of you high praise. You legislatively do so much. We stand on your shoulders all over the country because of what you're doing on the state level. We know now just how important state politics are. You elect the president, for heaven's sake. But I also look at Dr. Candace Matthews, who also jumps in on the personal side as well. And she's always wanting to know, how are you doing? Not just developmentally, emotionally, because I think that Dwight McKee and Attorney Fancher and Reverend Todd Geary and you, State Representative Reynolds, you all are fathers. And so, it's not that you would feel this differently as a mom, but you've been that boy. How is he doing? And what are the next steps? I mean, before we, go around the panel, you're talking to him. I mean, trembling at the court. He's thinking that the justice system is going to give him justice.
Yes, he was very, very, very upset because, he wanted to give up several times because he felt like, you know what, I just need to leave the school. I need to go. I'm like, no, baby, you got a lawsuit going on. Wait a minute. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about how we can deal with this, because I mean, it was to the fact where they wanted to break him. Okay. And let's be clear. We have educational assassins that are embedded in our school system that have the ideologies of white supremacy. That's what they do. That's what they deal with in Barbers Hill. And so even it was to the fact it got so egregious where I had to step in for the mom, because the mom had to end up going to have to be admitted to the psychiatric hospital because it took a toll on her. So I had to be that baby's mama, and they didn't want to deal with me. Okay. I said, oh no. I said, we were dealing with the grievance process. They threw away the religious exemption. They threw it away. Now, mind you, we had copies of everything. And so they threw that away. They had to deal with me with that. And so what happens is that when I rear up and start shaking trees, then that's when they turn around and retaliate against the child, or they're trying to retaliate against the attorney. You see what I'm saying? Like they was playing those games. But see, you can't do that with me, because see, I'm gonna come up there with like cheetahs with all the cameras, and I'm gonna put you on the spotlight, and I am going to highlight everything that you're doing. And so it was even to the fact where, you know, I had to bring one of them Reverend Jesse Jackson movies. Like, you know, we pulled up to the man's house, and I had all the bullhorns. We had all the cousins from Mississippi and everybody. I had the hair weave. I had everything there, because you are going to conform to black hair. I even had a basket that I created with all black hair products, and I gave it to the superintendent at his house, because one thing you're not going to do, you're going to leave our kids alone. So as far as Darryl, he's kind of hopeful at this time, because now he knows that he has help, because when we got hold with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, when we made that statement that we need federal intervention, because let's be clear, in order to deal with white supremacy, you deal with their pockets. They get Title VI monies, and we finna mess with their monies, because you didn't ran around here and mess with this child and violated his civil rights.
But
And
what would the Title VI money entitle them to?
I'm sorry?
What would the Title VI money entitle them to?
The Title VI monies deal with Ron. That deals with the, like, basically what Congresswoman was stating is that with the Title VI, she was filing a complaint where nation will come into play because it violates dealing with civil rights.
Okay.
That's the issue. That's the federal funding that they receive.
So she's making this a federal issue.
Yes. And so by them doing that, because see, with the state issue, they are in the bag with the state. You're not going to have it in the bag with the federal side. And that is the issue why they also have a federal lawsuit pending as well.
Well, you know, Mark Fancher, as a Black lawyer, freedom fighter, and as a civil libertarian, what are his rights? I mean, what does his case look like to you, Attorney Fancher?
Well, I was just going to interject and say that Title VI of the Civil Rights Act prohibits any recipient of federal funding from engaging in racial discrimination. And so actions that are filed based on it allege that. And so conceivably, there could be an action filed on his behalf, for racial discrimination, not necessarily limited to the Crown Act or to its provisions or anything relating to hair, but just the fact that they're engaging in racial discrimination against him. So that's likely what might have been contemplated for that.
Well, that's what Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, she's making. So she's already have that in motion as we speak.
Okay.
Dealing with that.
Well, Attorney Fancher, what do you make of this case? I mean, as we're watching more and more states enact Crown Acts, where your crown is protected, your hair is protected, your black hair. Because let's be clear, this is about black hair.
Well, I think it's a profound statement that we even have to have Crown Acts, because what it's saying essentially is that there are some of us who are not allowed to be who we are. And that in order for us to have the freedom and the liberty that is supposed to apply to everybody in this country, we've got to go through the trouble of having legislation enacted in order for us to be simply who we are, naturally and organically. And I think it's a profound statement about the deep cultural roots of what this country is all about and its European origins. Europe is probably the only place on the planet where there is as much intolerance baked into the culture of that continent. And it's a place where historically they have sought to exclude Jews, where they have and penalized them. They've sought to exclude and penalize Catholics. They've sought to exclude and penalize Protestants. They've sought to exclude and penalize even people who they suspect of being witches. I mean, basically, their culture is one that revolves around conformity and excluding people who are in any way non-compliant with what is believed to be the required norm. You're penalized for being different. You're punished for being different. And that has certainly carried over into this country where it really rests on a presumption of white privilege and white supremacy. And anybody that does not conform with it has to be, consistent with European cultural practices, punished for it. And there is just a belief that the European aesthetic is the one that prevails. It's the one that dominates, and everybody needs to conform with it. And if you don't conform with it, then that is perceived as an act of resistance, an act of rebellion, a reaction, an attack, really, on the established order. Just by not conforming, you're attacking the system. You're attacking, the culturally dominant group. And it in some ways, I think, communicates to us in the futility, in some ways, of trying to force people to accept us as we are. We have to do it for purposes of survival. But for those who approach this with the idea that by, through legislation and the other things that we're doing, that this is somehow at the end going to result in a society where everybody is respected for their cultural differences, where they're celebrated for their cultural difference, I'm not sure that's what's going to happen. I think at the same time that we're fighting to make sure that we survive from day to day, that young brothers like this one has the opportunity to go to school. At the same time that we're doing that, we need to be creating other spaces that we control, where we know that he will be safe, where we know that he will be honored, to the extent that our HBCUs, for whatever reason in the future, begin to flounder again, or if they're in trouble. We can't let that happen. We have to make sure that, our independent Black institutions continue to flourish, continue to remain strong, so that when we run into this inevitable hostility that we're facing, that we have safe places for our children to be.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts as you work with these young children every day, these young people?
Well, understand that this is not about fashion. This is about power. I think it's fairly ironic that they are coming down on this young guy because of his hairstyle and his raw cultural experiences. At the same time, they having all these controversies about Ken and Barbie, and what role does Ken play in society now, and where's his manhood, and how come he don't have testicles, and he wins the Oscar because white men are at a point now that they're trying to figure out where they fit. They're no longer the dominant personalities that they've been historically. And as they see, particularly on these college campuses and these high schools, these young Black men dominate basketball and football and become the center of attention because of hip hop and the culture. And as they grow up and have families but not be able to kind of reproduce themselves, that they're really trying to find out where they fit and how they fit, and how come they're not in charge of everything like they were before. And so this is just an expression to show these kids that old white men are still in control, still wield the power, and that they're going to impose their point and their point of view, no matter what. Otherwise, it makes no sense, no fashion sense, because what does it have to do with education? What does it have to do with learning? What does it have to do with self-motivation? It is purely a power move to say, yes, we're in charge, and yes, we can impose our will on you.
What do you say to Darryl? What would you say to him now, Dwight, as Dr. Matthews and as State Representative Reynolds really and Congresswoman Lee and the community tried to help him not break?
If I were Darryl, I'd welcome the fight. I see it as an opportunity to get my name in front papers and into the history books and get some legislation named after me. I would turn it into a positive. Say, hurrah, hurrah. What else can y'all figure out that I ain't supposed to be doing? And build a movement around that.
And that's
I
funny.
mean,
Exactly what I told him. I told him, I said, you go to that school and you tell her, come on, give me some more punishment. Bring it on.
That's right. Give me something else to deal with.
Yeah.
Because when I was in high school, when we had these situations, what they told us what we couldn't do, the next day would be a movement. The next day I'd close the schools down. I'd see it if I were Darryl, and I think you're telling the right things, Congress lady, that Darryl, you've been chosen by God to be on a mission. I would see, like the Bruise Brothers, I would say I'm on a mission to turn this thing around, to put my agenda on the table, to put my name in the history book and my picture in the newspapers. And he should revel in it rather than be discouraged by it.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you something else too, real quick, because like what else that was interesting, like when I say we was fighting tooth and nail with that district, I mean it was to the fact I called CPS on the district. You had these babies in this ISS. You had Darryl George at ISS feeding him bologna sandwiches every day in a cold room, sitting on a stool. As we know, bologna is a cancer-causing mechanism, but that is what they were doing to him. And I say, okay, I got something for y'all. I ended up calling CPS and had CPS all up in there. I called that commissioner and I told her this is coming and you better make sure it's properly investigated or I'm coming after you.
Mm.
How did he feel when he saw you do that?
He felt a bit of vindicated in a way. And even when, if you've seen it on CBS, when State Representative Reynolds was at the first court hearing, and they had the Mr. Bloom, who's the communication specialist. This man had came already with an. He lied on State Rep Retta Bowles, who's the author of the Crown Act, and you know how I am, honey. I believe in receipts. So I told Rep Ron Reynolds and State Rep Retta Bowles, I say, y'all just hold up. I'm finna shake this tree. Y'all just sit right here. Don't you say nothing. Baby, when he came out there, I wore him out. He was over here lying. I said, you think I wasn't going to bring State Rep Bowles here? You lied on it with your lying tail. I say, you better leave Darryl George alone because I'm coming after your boss and I'm coming after all you racist suckers. And that's exactly what I told him. And that made national news.
Well, I think we know you told him that. I know you did. And oh, please, we're all tickled. And but look, my mother has that spirit, as you well know. And so it made you feel protected, and it also empowered you and entitled you. It made you, my parents would say to us, I know you're not going to let them treat you that way. In the meantime, while you're being respectful.
Well, sometimes I wasn't respectful.
No. He as a child, he's in a different position. He needs to fight for him, right?
Yes, because I told that baby, I'm going to take it to the streets, okay? Don't worry, I got you. You and your mama. They're going to have to do it with me.
But you know what? It lets him know, Reverend Dr. Yeary and Dr. Matthews and State Representative Reynolds and Dwight McKee and Attorney Fancher, that he is somebody, that he's worth fighting for, that he's worth fighting over, that he's worth fighting about. Reverend Dr. Yeary.
There are a couple of things that kind of stand out. That one, we have a fight going on in state courts and in some federal courts across the country where there is an intentional misreading of the law. All you have to do is read the Crown Act as it was signed by Governor Abbott to know that the hairstyle that Darryl wears is actually expressly mentioned in the law as being a protected hairstyle. So to get to a point to say now that a policy can create an exception to law where there is no permissive language in the law, that policies may somehow create a carve out, is not only problematic, but it tells you what the system, this is the epitome of white supremacy. We can make up the rules as we go along, particularly when it comes to the claiming of and the affirming of Black agency, particularly, and don't miss the real point is he is a scholar. He's a smart kid. And what do you do with kids who are going to be competitive over and against what we often see as white mediocrity? Is we have to crush their spirit and cause them to lose their desire to remain actually engaged in not just Black excellence, but human excellence, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, you've got racial pride. Yes, we cheer on our kids. But when it's not the first time we've seen this recently in Texas, where there has been an assault on the dignity of Black students, gifted Black students, over and against the interests of white structures who are trying to limit the full expression of not only their humanity, but their genius. And so it's problematic on so many fronts. But here's the aside. The judge that heard this case ran unopposed the last time in the primary and in the general when he was up for re-election. See, that's where we got to remember, these are the consequences when we get solely focused on the myopia of the big shiny thing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and we don't pay attention to how we have to create a conflict and a challenge for these judges who take it as an entitlement that because they know they're going to run unopposed, they can interpret the law however they choose, and provided that, as long as somebody decides they're not going to appeal it, then nothing changes. Because there's an appeal here, we're going to see what happens. But to the Title VI implications, the beauty of the Title VI fight, Title VII discrimination requires the proof of intent. Title VI is written specifically where disparate impact and disparate effect is actually the mechanism by which you can establish that discrimination is actually taking place. And it then authorizes and allows the federal government to withhold federal funds or to create injunctive relief, saying, if you're going to get the check, you're going to have to impose these changes and there will be compliance associated with it. And so when we start thinking about what are the strategies, how do we fight to defend the dignity and the agency of our kids while they are certainly proving in these counties where this district court sits that he's a great student, he's not just a good student, and now you want to put him in a cold room, feeding him a bologna sandwich. That's what we call jail. We see that in detention centers every single day. That's the menu, that's the context, that's the scenery. It's cold, it's isolated, it's chilly, and it's meant to be traumatic. And so without the accountability, I applaud Representative Ron Reynolds and the fight that he keeps up. Dr. Candace Matthews, look, you just kind of say, girl, do what you're gonna do. When she sends you pictures of the weave she just bought and a picture of the superintendent's house to say, I found out where he lives, it's about to be on. But if we're not going to be serious about this engagement, we're going to see more of this, not less of it. And I think what you will see is that there will be a lot of imitators to try to push back on a bill that was so overwhelmingly clear and supported. You would have to be literally an idiot not to be able to understand the Texas Crown Act as it applies to Darryl George.
Well, and my question is, what other legal actions can be taken? And as I shared with you earlier this morning, and all of you are legal scholars, I am not. just read. You know, Thurgood Marshall and Charles Houston and that great team that led the Brownlee Board of Education decision and all of the court cases leading up to it. Thurgood Marshall used Kenneth and Mamie Clark's doll test. Those results. He said, he said, look, this test shows that 67% of our children are psychologically damaged by white supremacy. This is damaging. And so this is not separate, and it's separate, but it ain't equal. This is an awful thing, and it's damaging. It hurts our children. And when I look at just beyond COVID, there are so many pressures that Black children feel every single day. I can't help but think when I think of that boy, and to me, he's a boy, he's a child, trembling outside of that courtroom. First of all, I think he's so pleasantly surprised that he has people who are willing to fight for him, who feel that he's worth the fight. Because so many of our Black children don't feel that they're worth it. That's why you kill yourself, because you don't see yourself as worthy. And I'm not a parent, but I've got nieces, nephews, and godchildren. I have children about whom I care, and I care about all of our children. And I'm on a fundamental level, I'm worried about him.
Well,
I'm concerned.
well,
Dwight, I want him to have you and Dr. Matthews and Representative Reynolds and Reverend Neary and Attorney Fancher in his life, so he'll turn this around. Because I've known Dwight since I was 2. So I know his sister was my babysitter. I was a junior bridesmaid in her wedding. I've known him since a long time. I knew his mama. I knew his daddy. So I know where he comes from. And Auntie Lois is the kind of woman, and Uncle Frank they're the kind of parents who, as conservative as they were, as church-going, upright Black folks, they did not discourage you from being in the movement, Dwight.
well, you have to put it in.
Oh, whoa. All that lead up. Well, Mark Fancher, you are from a family of renowned teachers. What do we do for this child?
Well, I think that there's been so much that's been said that would be useful, but you also asked about legal strategies, and you made reference to the doll tests that
Yes.
Clark did and all of those in connection with Brown versus Board of Education. And I'm of the belief that in that case, as in many cases, it's not a matter of presenting the court with things that are going to persuade the court, because they're not often persuaded by what lawyers say or do, I don't think. I think that they already know what they want to do. And the task is to present them with things that will help them to justify what they already want to do. And the challenge is getting them to adopt a mindset that makes them want to do what you want them to do. And that doesn't always happen in the courtroom, which is why, as much as I respect and revere Thurgood Marshall, I really strongly disagree with what I understand to be his distaste for the mass movements that were coming out during that time. That, he did not like the idea of these people being in the streets when he thought that this was something that the lawyers should be taking care of. The fact is that those things have to work in tandem. The judges don't get into the mood or have the mindset that, we really need to make a change unless something is happening to persuade them that that's where we need to go. And sometimes movements do that. And they get the idea that, we've got this pressure out in the streets and we've got to deal with it. We've got a broader issue than just this litigant who's standing before me. The people are out there about to tear down the city, and we've got to figure out a way to calm them down. So maybe we can use this case in order to do it. And so I think that that's what has to happen. I think that the courts have to be convinced that there are going to be broader consequences than just this young brother being disappointed or being crushed or whatever it is, that the things that they care most about are somehow going to be impacted if they don't rule in the way that we want them to rule. Because if we remain silent, then the voices that they listen to are the voices of power. And that's who they move. That's who they move for. And I think that even with Brown v. Board of Education, there was a lot of that going on. In that they saw that that Jim Crow was really bad for business.
Right.
That there were a lot of green dollars that they wanted access to, and as long as these barriers were up, then they weren't allowed. The money was not flowing in the way that they needed it to flow. So they needed to start taking some steps to break that down.
Make them act right, though. You make them act right when you dig in the pocketbooks. And that's why the federal intervention is important. And let me just say this. Look, you need three things for change. You need agitation, legislation, and litigation. That's what you need. Those are the three elements right there. Because you need the tree shakers like us, who they can't tell what to do. We're going to come out there, we're going to stir it up, we're going to stir the whole gumbo pot. Then you need the legislators who will go in to make the state laws, to make the changes that's needed, and then utilize us to be the muscle, okay? Then you need the litigation, because in order for people to act right, you're going to act right with a lawsuit. You're going to act right when you're being sued and your pockets is being touched. So at the end of the day, it needs all of this.
Absolutely.
Cohesive unit to make change.
And then I also think that for the young man's sake, this question you had asked me, is that you need to give him context, story context, so he'll know what he's up against. And this is not new, but we always prevail in this. I mean, in pro football, when the black ball players out of contempt used to spike the ball, they made that illegal and say if you spike the ball, you get penalized. Then now that you get glorified by how well you spike the ball, even the white boys spike the ball now. In basketball, when blacks begin to dominate the game and begin to slam dunk, they made slam dunking illegal. And so when Lou Alcindor played in UCLA, it was illegal to slam dunk the ball. That's why he developed the skyhook, because he could not slam dunk the ball. Now they judge you by how well you can slam dunk the ball. That in what happens is that when we do it, they rise up, it becomes illegal. We prevail and become dominant, and then we become the new standard. And so what you have to encourage him that if he keep fighting and keep his energy and his faith intact, at some point his hairstyle will become the new standard. And we always prevail and become dominant, even though we start off as the adversaries.
Well, State Representative Reynolds, I mean, I think, and that is the key. And thank you, Mark, for bringing up that about Thurgood Marshall. As much as I admired him, I knew that it was that wing of the movement from which Dwight descends, I descend, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. There was always a tension there because he felt that we were out of line. You know, it was that tension. And it's like, as Dr. Matthews said, if you don't have the agitation, I mean, because Brown v. Board of Education, State Representative Reynolds happened in the context, within a social context.
That's right.
It didn't just happen.
No.
It occurred.
No, I think that Dr. Matthews was spot on. I think it's not a either or. It's not A, B, C. It's all of the above. It's A, B, and C. I think it takes agitation. It takes grassroots direct action, is what we like to call it in the NAACP hat that I wear on the national board. It takes all of us in that space. Sometimes, in order to really galvanize the awareness, you have to make, in the words of John Lewis, good trouble. What does that mean? That means that you take it to the streets. You have acts of civil disobedience. You have boycotts. You have protests. You have marches. You have demonstrations. You have where Dr. Candace Matthews went to the residence of the person. So there's that element is necessary. That is, you cannot skip that. That is what the way we saw after George Floyd's death. We saw the young people take it to the streets. That led to the law, the legislation that we helped pass, banning chokeholds, creating an officer's duty to intervene. We didn't get the other piece for the ending qualified immunity, but if it wasn't for the agitation, we wouldn't have got that. Then you do need the courts, you need the litigation. So it's all of the above. It is no us versus them. You need the grassroots. You need the people in the streets. You need the lawyers. You need the advocacy groups. You need all of it. All of us. It is the African proverb. It takes a village, and we're all a part of that village in order for us to make progress. And we've made progress because we've had those elements. We need those elements in this situation now. It's not the times haven't changed, right? We haven't arrived in this post-racial America that people envisioned after Obama was elected in 2008. We haven't fulfilled Dr. King's dream where people are judged by the content of their character. We're still in large part judged by the color of our skin and our hair, since we're talking about the Crown Act. So yes, I think we need all of it. And it's incumbent upon us to never get complacent in our communities where, hey, I've arrived. I have my house in the suburbs. I have my degree, my education. You know, my kids go to private school. I have a Tesla or a BMW or a Mercedes. You know, I go to church on Sundays. Shame on, I've arrived. I ain't in the hood no more. You know,
that's the
God, it could be us. So we stand on the shoulders of our forefathers and our ancestors, and we cannot allow them to take us back on our watch. That's what they're doing right now. This MAGA movement, this MAGA mentality, all these anti-DEI, this quote woke agenda, it is to take us back. They want their power play back. They want white men back in control. They want black subservient or on the football field, on the basketball court, entertaining us in the theaters, but they don't want us in the classroom. They don't want us in the courtroom. So we're seeing a backlash, you know, from this Obama movement. And you're seeing that first it was the Tea Party. Now it's the MAGA movement. So we need to be diligent and we need to be unified. And it takes all of us, academics, grassroots, jelly makers, tree shakers, lawyers, NAACP, Urban League, Rainbow Push, all of us have a role to play. Legislative Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus. So that is why it's important for us to have these conversations to remind us of the progress that we've made. It was on the backs of those who were on the streets, in the courtroom, and the grassroots organizations, all of us working together to make it happen.
Oh,
well, you know, Dr. Matthews, I've got about 2.5 minutes left. I want you, with all due respect to the panel, I want you and State Representative Reynolds to close us out and help us to understand what it is that we around the country can do, what you would have us do. Dr. Matthews.
Well, first of all, I would like to have all of you around the country to jump on this battlefield with us, because it's going to take all of us to make change and for us to get this done. Now, I am going to say this. Now, if you're not real and you just want to get over here and want to clout chase, this is not the movement for you. We need people who care about people and who is going to be on this front line with us. Because at the end of the day, when you do not have people with the right intentions, that turns out where it comes to a whole different level. We don't have time for that. If you're not going to do what's right, and if you're not going to get on this battlefield with us, don't say nothing. But if you are, we need you.
Okay, State Representative Reynolds.
Hey, I second that. I thank you all for being a part of this great discussion, because as Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This may be happening in Texas to Darryl George, but just know it could be in Mississippi, it could be in Arkansas, California, any other place. So yes, stand with us, because this is righteous indignation, what they're doing to him. and we need the villagers to come in and stand in the gap. We need people that are willing to be on the front line, speaking truth to power, amplifying this message so that Barbers Hill knows this isn't a local issue. This isn't just a state issue, but we've made this and elevated to a national issue, not on our watch.
And Darryl is our child.
Yes.
He belongs
But
to
for
all.
the grace of God, this could have been any of our kids.
He is our child.
He is our child. He is our child.
Gonna leave him alone, baby. This is our kids. You gonna leave him alone, or we coming?
And you're not just and you're going to support him. We're
That's
gonna make
right.
we're gonna make you do right, and that's the way that has to be. That is what the agitator does. If you don't have an agitator, you're not gonna have clean clothes.
I'm a professional tree shaker, baby. Yes, ma'am.
No, not you, Dr. Matthews. No, y'all, girl.
Hey, Santita, I just gotta say, we've been inspired by the Reverend Jesse Jackson, so we're gonna continue the movement.
Oh yeah.
Well, you know what? I tell you what, he inspires me every day, even as he is in the wheelchair mostly with the Parkinson's. But you know, he has the fighter's disease, and I remember when Muhammad Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and my father went to the hospital and walked him out the hospital. That was 40 years ago. How ironic. But they both stayed in the ring, not too long, but as long as they needed to stay, and they were willing to do it. And you know what? My father says, you don't drown because you take on too much water. You drown when you stop kicking. And he's still in the fight, and you need to be in the fight too. All right, I'm sending you so much love. Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, Dr. Candace Matthews, I love you all. Dwight McKee, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Dwight has a book that I cannot wait for him to put out there. He's just passing it out to us, and boy, is it fantastic. And Reverend Dr. Todd Deary, Attorney Mark Fancher, love you all. Second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about TikTok. There's much more to this story than you think. There are a lot of people who want TikTok to be censored because they keep changing the narrative. Got to talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a moment.